Most people think improving a trigger is about making it lighter, but today we're joined by Lauren from Precision FCU to break down what he actually optimizes for, and it's not what you think. Hey, Dave here from Pewcentric, the marketplace where firearms enthusiasts just like you discover unique gear, services, and training. Basically, everything but the guns. Pewcentric Spotlight is our ongoing series of deep dives into the unique products and services on the platform. So Lauren, why do factory triggers need any work or refinement at all?
Well, Dave, it's SIG Sauer that when the specs are made and designed and engineers make these guns, they're made to be modular. So when you're taking off a slide and putting on another slide from SIG or even an aftermarket company, the tolerances have to be in a certain range, and to have those tolerances work and to be 100% reliable from slide A to slide B, the same FCU, and different grip modules as well, the margins in those tolerances have to be in a certain range for them to all be compatible. And when the triggers come from the factory, they're 5 to 6 pounds. They have a long pre-travel, long mushy, spongy break, and a long reset. And the work that I do on the guns, the custom fitting, removes all the issues, lightens the pull weight, shortens the pre-travel and over-travel, and removes all the mushiness in the slide squat.
And just by the way, I have my own P365 here. It's got the standard slide on an X macro frame with the Radian, ramjet on it. So these parts, like you said, are interchangeable. So basically that interchangeability, the ability to take this FCU and put it into another pistol, the very fact that you can do that also creates some sort of compromises for how finally you can tune it. So basically it's kind of built into the design.
I mean, the whole thing with, is you could have one FCU and 20 guns. Literally pop the FCU into different guns, different grips, different slides, different sizes. If you want to carry a 10 round versus 21 round mag, which prints.
What do people get wrong or just misunderstand about trigger upgrades?
I think most people find that putting in drop-in kit that you can order, where you get springs, lighter springs, you get a polishing compound to polish the metals, two metal surfaces rubbing together, less friction, it's smoother. That's going to be good enough. It's improving the situation, absolutely. However, it's nowhere near as close to what's possible. And when you feel the difference between a full custom job, hand fit, versus a drop-in kit, it's night and day.
I've had a chance to experience that firsthand. I took a class with Max Michel, and we'll talk about him in a minute, but someone who has one of your trigger refinements, and I had other folks in the class with their own P320s with upgraded kits, including one just like this one from Gray Guns. Tons of people have those kind of Gray Guns drop-in kits with the spring and the trigger shoe and all that. But the feel and performance is night and day. And I'm not talking about the shooter, I'm talking about the take-up and everything. So it's obvious it's not just a kit, a springs, and some polishing. It's not the same thing. So when we've talked, you make a big point about saying you don't do trigger jobs, you do trigger system refinements. In a nutshell, what do you mean by that?
Well, the trigger refinement is taking the internals of the FCU and actually changing the geometry of them and having the parts inside the FCU custom fit to the striker and the slide itself that's going on top of the FCU, rather than just a trigger job drop-in kit. That's the big difference.
So at a high level, when you get a gun in that needs trigger refinement, what do you do? What's your process?
Well, when I first get the gun, obviously I unpack it and make sure it's clear, and I'll feel the trigger and how it comes from the factory. If you had the opportunity to have multiple versions of 320s or 365 side by side that haven't been worked on before, you might notice each one feels a little bit different, even though it's all factory parts. So I'll feel how the trigger is, and I'll start in my mind kind of picturing how those parts are moving inside of that gun. And working on as many as I have, I understand and kind of can picture what I'm feeling when I'm pressing the trigger of a factory untouched trigger, and take the gun apart, completely strip the gun down to every single piece possible, check for any cracks, any parts that need replaced. I'll start a slow process of changing the geometry on the parts. And I don't do them all at one time. I'll do one part, put it all back together, feel it, take it apart, refine that, and then move to the next part that needs changed and adjusted, and continue that process over and over until I get the trigger to where I want it. Taking the gun apart and putting it back together could, on a minimum, at least 5 or 6 times each part that I change, and it could be up to 15 to 20 times depending on how many changes I need to make based on the feel that I keep getting every time I put it back together.
the outset of the video, we talked about you don't optimize for what most other people who do quote unquote trigger jobs are trying to optimize for, which is typically what's the poundage or the weight on the trigger, right? That's like the number one thing they lead in with, but that's not what you're ultimately going for. What are you optimizing for?
The work that I do is really to optimize the trigger for speed and accuracy. So when you take a factory trigger on a 365 or 320, they're very similar. There's this long pre-travel and then this long mushy or spongy break. And the more that trigger has to move that you're pulling, and the heavier it is as well, but the more mushy, spongy feeling, along with the slide squat that comes in all the guns, all that energy from your fingers going right through the gun and right out the muzzle, which in the big picture, it's accuracy, right? You need to be fast and you need to be accurate. And the more muzzle movement, the less accurate you're going to be. I work on the triggers when the finished product goes back to the customer. The total travel amount from the resting position of the trigger when the gun's loaded and ready to fire, the total travel is greatly reduced. The pull weight's reduced, call it 60% or so total pull weight, from 5 to 6 pounds down to 2 to 2.5 even for a 320, to 3 to 3.5 for a 365. And the shorter travel, shorter reset, and the snappier, crispy break is going to generate greater accuracy, more control over your shots, faster follow-up shots. This is my new 320 Max version 2. You can see the shooting left-handed, the very little pre-travel to short, crisp break. So the travel between the wall and the break is greatly reduced, allowing for more control, more accuracy, faster follow-up shots.
What would that look like on a stock pistol? Do you have one there that you can show us?
So this is a factory FCU. Nothing's been changed inside this gun. You can see the pre-travel much greater. And then once we're at the wall here, the amount of travel to go through that mushy, spongy wall, I'm still moving. The trigger's moving. You might not be able to see it in the camera. It's still moving. Finally, the break. So all that movement is, the energy is going through from your finger onto the trigger and coming out the muzzle of the gun. The longer and harder that trigger pull is, creates muzzle movement, which the further away you are from the target, the greater your chances of missing.
So let's say, Lauren, I take this P365 with its, P365 FCU inside, and let's say I send it to you, you do your amazing work on it, but then I decide I want to take that same FCU and then put it into a completely different frame, even a different slide, right? Like turn it into like a fuse model, if you will. Can I do that, and what should I expect in terms of performance and accuracy?
Well, ideally, the best option is, but not always least expensive option, is to have each gun fit and leave them as is the way I send them back to you. The reason for that is the way the tolerance stacking works in these guns. The parts, when you put a different slide on that might have a different tolerance on the fit to the FCU, which is the frame of the gun, you might not have enough rearward trigger movement to release the striker. So depending on the fit, if it runs, it'll possibly feel different, most likely feel different, or it might not run at all. So the short answer to your question is, it's possible, and most of the time they do work, especially if you're taking a SIG slide off and you're putting another SIG slide on. Probably it's going to feel different, but it'll work. Once you get into the aftermarkets, they normally work. There are some situations where different types of grip modules fit a little bit differently, and there needs to be a small adjustment made. So depending on your knowledge of the gun and how to make small adjustments on your end as a user, most likely work, but it's always best to have every gun fit, because I'm fitting the parts of the FCU and the FCU, the frame itself, the serialized part, to the slide that you send me. So it's hit or miss. If you have a bunch of different slides, some will work, some might not.
So you have 3 listings on Pewcentric: competition tuning for the P320 platform, one for the P365 platform, which, I have here, and I've never really thought of it in the context of competition tuning, and a custom services listing. Can you go over those 3 options?
So the P320 listing is a competition trigger job. You're going to have all the geometry changes that I do, plus the lighter pull weight by putting in the custom-made springs that I had made to achieve the 2 to 2.5 pound pull weight. The same goes for the 365. 365s are in the 3 to 3.5 pound pull range. All the same geometry work, even though the FCUs are completely designed different. I still achieve all the geometry changes that I need to do. To touch on the competition jobs for 365s and why would someone want one, the competition market out there that USPSA has, they have introduced a concealed carry division. It's growing. and 365 line, whether it's SIG's slides or aftermarket slides. Other companies out there using a 365 FCU with their aftermarket grip modules and slides. A full-size gun fuses a 4.3-inch barrel. There's a couple of companies out there, I think, with 4.5 or even longer slides and barrels out there now. So those guns can be used in competition. Or if it's just a range gun, then you want the best trigger to go out there and beat your buddies on steel plates or whatever it is. You achieve that with better trigger job, more accuracy, faster follow-up shots. And then on the custom option, whether it's a 365 or a 320, and you want a custom trigger, you would go under that option for the FCU Refinement, but you don't want a 2-pound trigger. Maybe you're a new shooter, or maybe this is a gun that you keep at the house and you just don't want that lighter trigger. And under that option, we can discuss if you want, say, a 3 or 4 or even 5-pound trigger, but with all the refined geometry inside the gun. So it's a clean, crisp break, just heavier.
So someone might ask the question, why would you spend $500 on refining the trigger system when the gun itself might cost anywhere, depending on the model, $600 all the way up to $2,000. Like this one right here wasn't $600, I've already upgraded it. But you know, $500, it's not a small amount of money. So what's the rationale for that investment?
If you look at the cost of the gun and you look at the cost of ammo, the purchase price of the gun is not the expensive, it's the cost of ammo. You know, if $2,000 gun, if ammo's $300 a case for 9mm, say for just the regular ball ammo that you could buy at the local gun shop, 5-6 cases of ammo for the cost of the gun. You could easily shoot that in a month if you're a competitive shooter, or maybe even a year for the weekend warrior. So why would someone spend $500 on a trigger job? You're gonna make the gun as good as it possibly can be. So I'm sure there's a million analogies out there. If you want the best costs money.
And you get what you pay for.
You get what you pay for, exactly.
So I want to thank Warren from Precision FCU for joining us today. And if you're serious about improving your speed and accuracy with your own SIG P320 or P365, you can connect with Warren at pewcentric.com/precisionfcu. And as always, like and subscribe to support the Pewcentric community and the makers and experts behind it.